01 The preschool's field day had just wrapped up that afternoon when the parents' WhatsApp group started buzzing nonstop. The teacher, Ms. Albright, uploaded a flood of pictures with a quick message. So many great photos today. Please save any you'd like. I was on a coffee break at the office, my phone vibrating against the table in the break room. I opened the chat, a long line of unread notifications scrolling up my screen. One photo after another. Kids holding balloons, kids with cheap plastic medals, a few kids crying after a tumble in the grass. A chaotic jumble of childhood. I smiled as I scrolled. My daughter, Chloe Young, had just started pre-K this year. She's one of those little girls with a round face and two short pigtails that bounce when she runs. I promised her that if she did a good job today, I'd post a picture of her on Facebook. She cared a lot about that. "You will post it, right, Daddy?" she'd asked before I left for work that morning. Ide nudda. So I started swiping, looking for the perfect shot, one where she had her biggest, brightest smile. There were so many photos. It took a while before I found her. She was standing on the field, her cheeks flushed, holding a little flag. I was about to hit save. My thumb swiped down. The next photo made me freeze. It was a family portrait. Not ours. A couple was standing with their son on the grass near the track, the teacher obviously having taken the picture for them. The focus was a little boy with a blue backpack, but it was the edge of the frame that caught my eye. In the corner of the shot, a woman was kneeling. She was looking down, tying the little boy's shoelace. The movement was smooth, automatic, like she'd done it 100 times before. At first, I just thought her profile looked familiar. So I pinched the screen and zoomed in. In that instant, my fingers froze on the glass, as if someone had clamped down on my hand. Because I saw that face every single day. It was my wife, Diane. She was kneeling there, her hair pulled back, a soft, gentle look on her face. A gentleness that felt foreign. She'd told me she was in Phoenix for a regional conference. Said she was completely swamped. So busy she wouldn't even have time to call. But here she was, on a preschool field, tying another kid's shoes. I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity. The sounds of the break room faded away. Someone was talking. Someone else laughed. I didn't hear a thing. All I felt was a block of ice forming in my chest, a cold that numbed me from the inside out. I zoomed in further. The name embroidered on the boy's backpack. 3 words. Leo Carter. I stared at the name. Something felt terribly wrong. So I opened the preschool's parent portal app. Parents had access to class lists, event signups, and emergency contact information that other parents opted to share for carpools and playdates. I scrolled down, page after page. My heart started beating faster. Finally, under the emergency contact list, I saw a number. It was so familiar I could dial it with my eyes closed. Diane's cell number. It was listed right there, under the heading, Mother. I stared at the screen for a long time, my mind a complete blank. After a moment, I let out a slow, shaky breath. Diane didn't come home that night. She texted to say the conference was running late. I replied with a simple, okay. I didn't ask a single question. The next afternoon, I arrived at the preschool 30 minutes early. The pre-K class was on the ground floor. The windows were low enough that you could see everything inside. I stood outside, watching. A group of kids was playing with blocks. Chloe was sitting in a corner, carefully building a small house, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. Seeing her like that, my heart softened for a second. Just then, the classroom door was pushed open. A woman walked in. I recognized her instantly. Diane. She was wearing a light trench coat, a smile on her face. She looked like she belonged there. A little boy immediately ran over and threw himself into her arms. His voice was loud and clear. Mommy. Those 2 words hit me like a sledgehammer, my ears ringing. Diane picked him up, patting his back gently. Were you a good boy today? The little boy nodded. Another man walked in behind her. He was in his late 30s, tall and broad-shouldered. He casually slid his arm around Diane's shoulders, then smiled at the teacher. Sorry we're late, he said. His mom's been tied up with a bunch of things. His tone was so relaxed, as if he were talking about the weather. The teacher just nodded and said a few words about how well the boy had behaved. I stood outside the window. An outsider. Just then, a small hand tugged at the bottom of my jacket. I looked down. Chloe had slipped out of the classroom at some point. She was looking up at me, her eyes bright and curious. Daddy, she said, that lady looks just like Mommy. A knot tightened in my gut. I followed her gaze. Inside, Diane was leaning down, straightening the little boy's collar. Her movements were gentle and meticulous. I knelt down and gently covered Chloe's eyes with my hand. She flinched. "Daddy." I didn't answer. I just pulled her into a hug. In that moment, a single devastating thought became crystal clear. My wife, she was already someone else's mother. 02 after leaving the preschool, I took Chloe to get a slice of pizza. She sat on the high stool, her little legs swinging back and forth. "Daddy," Ms. Albright said I was the fastest runner today. I nodded, picking the little bits of onion off her slice. She hated them. "You'll have to show me how fast you can run next time." She grinned, a little smear of tomato sauce on her cheek. I wiped it off with a napkin. Throughout the entire meal, I didn't mention what we'd seen at the preschool. A child's world is simple. I didn't want to drag her into this. We got home a little after 7. Diane wasn't back yet. The apartment was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Chloe lay on the floor, drawing a picture of me and her next to a crooked-looking house. I went into the kitchen to make dinner. The oil in the pan had just started to shimmer when my phone vibrated. It was a text from Diane. She said things at the regional office were a mess, that she'd just gotten out of a meeting and would be home late. Her tone was no different from any other time. I stared at the words for a few seconds, then set the phone face down on the counter. The oil in the pan was starting to smoke. I cracked an egg into it. It hit the pan with a loud sizzle, hot oil spattering everywhere. The sound grated on my nerves. Dinner was ready quickly. Chicken and rice, with a side of broccoli. Chloe ate seriously, chewing each bite carefully. She looked up at me. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" I handed her a glass of milk. A little later, she nodded and went back to her food. After she ate, I sent her to take a bath. She stood on her little step stool to brush her teeth, the faucet running. I stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment, a heavy, indescribable feeling settling in my chest. Around 9:30, I heard a key in the lock. Diane was home. She came in, sighing as she kicked off her heels. Today was absolutely insane. She tossed her purse on the couch and rubbed the back of her neck. The branch office is a total disaster. I had to oversee everything. She looked perfectly natural as she said it, as if she delivered similar lines 1,000 times. I brought a bowl of soup out from the kitchen and set it on the dining table. "Eat something." She came over and sat down. "You're the only one who takes care of me." She picked up a spoon and started sipping the soup. I didn't even have time for lunch during the meetings today. I sat down across from her, just watching her. The light from the overhead fixture cast shadows on her face. I'd looked at this face for 7 years. It couldn't have been more familiar. But right now, it felt like I was looking at a stranger. She took a bite of chicken. Just as she put it in her mouth, I spoke. "Leo Carter had a tough day at preschool. He was crying." Her spoon stopped midair. Her whole body seemed to freeze. A couple of seconds passed before she slowly lifted her head to look at me. "What did you say?" The color was draining from her face. I placed my phone on the table. The screen was lit up. The first photo was the one from field day. Her, kneeling, tying the little boy's shoelaces. The second was a screenshot of the class roster. The third was the emergency contact page. Her cell number, clear as day, listed under Mother. The only sound in the dining room was the ticking of the clock. Diane stared at the phone, her fingers trembling slightly. She didn't touch her food again. She didn't say a word. After about half a minute, she looked up at me, her expression suddenly turning cold. "Were you following me?" I couldn't help but let out a short, bitter laugh. So that was the problem in her eyes. I leaned back in my chair. "It's on the school's parent portal. Anyone can see it." Her lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes darted away for a second. "So what?" Her tone turned defensive. "Trevor is divorced. It's hard for him to raise a kid alone. Is it a crime for me to help him out?" She said it like she was talking about the most normal thing in the world. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her. She continued. "The kid is only 4 years old. He's been a mess ever since his mom left. I picked him up a few times, and he just got attached to me. You're a man. You probably don't get it." She sighed, as if her heart was breaking for someone else. "The poor kid. He needs a mother." I nodded slowly. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out the divorce papers, and placed them on the table between us. The papers made a soft, rustling sound. Diane froze. She stared at the document, her brow furrowing. "What is this?" My voice was perfectly calm. "Since you love playing mom so much, you could go do it for real." She stared at me, as if she hadn't understood. Are you kidding me? I pushed a pen across the table toward her. Sign it. The air in the room grew thick and heavy. Diane stared at me for a long time. Then suddenly she laughed. It was a laugh laced with mockery. Greg, are you serious? I helped take care of a kid, and you're going to blow it up into this? She pushed the divorce papers back toward me. You need to calm down. Stop acting like a child. I didn't touch the papers. I just watched her. She seemed to find the whole situation ridiculous. She got up and poured herself a glass of water. Besides, she said, turning back to look at me, the mortgage, the car, it's all in your name. Chloe is so little. Are you really going to let her grow up without a mother? She spoke with absolute certainty, as if she'd already calculated all the angles. I suddenly found it all a little funny. So this was it. She thought I couldn't leave her. I stood up and pushed the divorce papers back in front of her one more time. Sign it. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. Diane's expression changed bit by bit. She stared at me, as if she were really seeing me for the first time. The house was quiet for a long time. In the other room, I could hear Chloe turning the pages of a book. Swish, swish. Diane looked down at the document, her fingers slowly curling into a fist. You better be sure about this, she said. I didn't answer. I just stood there. She looked at me, her eyes growing colder by the second. The soup in her bowl had long gone cold. Neither of us touched it again. 03. The divorce papers sat on the dining table until the next morning. Diane hadn't signed them. She slept in the bedroom. I took the couch. The apartment felt heavy, like it was filled with a thick, invisible fog. The next morning, I got up to make Chloe breakfast. As I was frying eggs, she came out of her room, rubbing her eyes, her hair a messy tangle. Daddy, is Mommy still sleeping? I put a glass of milk in front of her. Let her sleep in. Chloe nodded and sat down to eat her toast. The bedroom door never opened. By the time I got back from dropping her at preschool, the apartment was empty. Diane's heels were gone from by the door. The divorce papers were still on the table, but she had folded them carelessly in half, as if she'd given them nothing more than a passing glance. I smoothed the paper out again. A faint crease remained. I stared at the line for a few seconds, then put the papers back in their envelope. She didn't come home that night, or the next. On the third day, a text finally arrived. Her tone was flat. She was staying at colleague's place. A project was keeping her busy. She wouldn't be home for a while. I didn't reply. Life went on. I dropped Chloe at preschool in the morning and picked her up in the afternoon. In the evenings, I'd help her with her alphabet flashcards. Kids are sensitive to atmosphere. She would sometimes ask, "Why isn't Mommy coming home?" "Mommy's busy with work," I'd say. She would nod, as if she understood. A few days later, I got a call. It was Diane. The line was quiet on her end. Her first words were, "Are you still throwing a tantrum?" I was standing on the balcony, holding my phone. Below, someone was walking their dog, and kids were yelling on the playground. The sounds felt distant. "I'm not throwing a tantrum," I said. She was silent for a moment. Then put that thing away. She didn't say the words divorce papers, as if the subject wasn't even worth mentioning. I didn't respond. She sighed, a hint of impatience in her voice. "Greg, we're not kids anymore. What's the point of all this drama?" I leaned against the railing, my fingers tightening on the metal. She kept going. "Trevor is having a hard time. His wife left. He has no one to look after his son. What's so wrong with me helping out?" I looked out at a gray apartment building in the distance. Helping out by playing mom at his kid's preschool. The other end of the line went silent. After a few seconds, her voice turned cold. "Do you have to put it like that? The kid just got used to calling me that. Is it really such a big deal?" I didn't argue anymore. I just said, then signed the papers. She sounded like she'd been choked off. She was quiet for a moment, then let out a small, sharp laugh. "Greg," she said, her voice dripping with confidence, "do you really think you can manage without me?" She said it softly, but with absolute certainty. I didn't answer. She pressed on. "The house is mortgaged under your name. The car is yours. Chloe is only 4. You think you can raise her by yourself?" Her tone became measured, analytical, as if she were laying out an undeniable business case. "Besides, your job is so demanding. Who's going to take care of her?" Leaning there on the balcony, I suddenly realized something. To her, our marriage was never about love. It was a structure, a house, a child, a division of labor. She thought those things would keep me tied to her forever. Her voice came through the phone again. "I'll be back in a few days." We're not talking about this again. She hung up before I could say anything else. I put the phone in my pocket and stood there for a while. A cool breeze blew between the buildings. 2 days later, I took the divorce papers directly to her office. She worked as an admissions director at a private academy. Her office was on the 5th floor. When I walked in, she was talking to a colleague. She looked up and froze when she saw me. Her colleague politely excused himself. The office door clicked shut. She frowned at me. "What are you doing here?" I placed the envelope on her desk. "Sign it." Her face darkened instantly. "Are you insane?" I didn't sit. I just stood there. She stared at the envelope as if trying to confirm it was real. Then she pushed it back toward me. "Take it and leave. I don't have time for your games." I didn't move. The low hum of the office air conditioning filled the silence. Her patience was wearing thin. "Greg," I already explained myself. "What more do you want?" I just looked at her. "Sign it." Her expression finally cracked. That absolute certainty began to crumble. She stared at me for a long time, trying to gauge if I was serious. "You really want a divorce?" I nodded. She got up and paced around the office for a moment before stopping. "Have you thought this through? If we get divorced, who gets Chloe?" "I do," I said. She blinked, as if she hadn't expected that. "You'll take her? You think you can handle that?" I didn't bother explaining. I just placed the pen on top of the envelope. She looked at the pen, her hands clenching at her sides. Outside the door, footsteps passed back and forth. Time ticked by. Finally, Diane sat down. She opened the envelope and scanned the document. "The house goes to you. The car goes to you. The kid goes to you." She looked up at me, her eyes a mix of emotions. "You're just doing this to spite me." I said nothing. She stared at me for a long time, searching for any hint of hesitation. She found none. At last, she picked up the pen. She paused for a second over the signature line, then wrote her name. Diane Zhao. The 3 words were written with force, the tip of the pen scratching against the paper. She closed the folder and pushed it toward me. "Fine," she said, getting to her feet. Her voice was as cold as ice. "Don't come crying to me when you regret this." I took the envelope. I didn't answer. I turned and walked toward the door. Her voice came from behind me. "Greg." I paused for a second, but didn't turn around. Her voice followed me, thick with an anger she couldn't suppress. "You'll be back. You'll come crawling back to me." I pushed the door open and walked out. The hallway was long, the fluorescent lights painfully white. I walked forward, step by step, with one single, clear thought in my mind. Some doors, once you close them, you never open again. 0 for the divorce was finalized quickly. Diane didn't drag it out. Signatures, filings, the judge's stamp. It was all over, just a process. When we walked out of the courthouse, the air was heavy and humid. She stood on the steps and looked at me, a complicated expression on her face, as if she was waiting for me to say something. I said nothing. I just turned and walked away. Chloe was at preschool that day. She had no idea what had happened. When I went to pick her up, she came running out with her little backpack and threw her arms around me. "Daddy," she chirped, looking up at me. "My teacher said my drawing was the best today." I stroked her hair. "Then you have to show it to me when we get home." She nodded, smiling brightly. In that moment, I realized that some things don't need an explanation. As long as a child has someone they can count on, life goes on. I started making arrangements to move. My company had projects all over the country, and I applied for a transfer to our Portland office. They happened to have an opening. The approval came through quickly. Selling the house was straightforward. I sold off some of the furniture and shipped the rest. The rooms emptied out one by one. One night, while cleaning out a closet, I found an old stuffed rabbit. It was a gift for Chloe's 2nd birthday. She'd slept with it for years. I placed the rabbit in a suitcase. As I zipped it shut, the house felt exceptionally empty, as if something essential had been permanently removed. On the day we left, Chloe sat on a suitcase, swinging her legs. "Daddy, where are we going?" "To a new place to live." She tilted her head, thinking, "Is Mommy coming?" I paused for a second. "We're going to our new home first." She nodded and didn't ask again. A child's attention is easily captured by new things. The whole drive, she stared out the window, pointing out buildings and trucks. The new city was bigger than our old one. More skyscrapers, more people. The company set me up in a temporary corporate apartment. It was small but clean. When Chloe walked in for the first time, she did a full spin in the living room. "Is this our house?" "Yes." She ran to the window and looked out. There was a small playground below. A few kids were on the slide. She watched them intently. The next day, I took her to her new preschool. The director was a woman in her 40s with a gentle voice. She knelt down to say hello to Chloe. "Hi there." Chloe hid behind my leg, peeking out with just half her face. The director smiled. "It's okay to be a little shy at first." I filled out the paperwork. The teacher came to take her to the classroom. Chloe walked a few steps, then looked back at me, her eyes filled with anxiety. I knelt down. "Daddy will be back this afternoon to pick you up." She clutched my shirt. "Promise? Promise." Only then did she slowly let go. When the classroom door closed, I stood in the hallway for a moment. I could hear the chatter of children inside, a lively, happy sound. I realized then that this city was a new beginning for us. Over the next few days, Chloe had a hard time adjusting. Before bed, she would ask, "When is Mommy coming back?" I didn't give her a complicated explanation. I just said, "Daddy's here." She would hug her old stuffed rabbit, quiet for a moment, then slowly close her eyes. Time moved forward. I started learning how to manage a life for two. I'd get up early to make breakfast. Milk, eggs, toast in rotation. Chloe would sit at the table, swinging her legs, watching me in the kitchen. "Daddy, you didn't used to cook." I put a fried egg on her plate. "I do now." She took a bite and nodded seriously. "It's pretty good." Sometimes I try to do her hair. The two pigtails always came out lopsided. She'd look at herself in the mirror for a moment, then burst out laughing. "Daddy, you made them silly." I'd laugh with her. "We'll try a different style next time." On the weekends, I took her to the park. The grassy fields were huge. She ran until she was sweating, a kite trailing behind her. When the wind caught it, the kite slowly lifted into the air. She looked up, her eyes shining like stars. "Daddy, it's flying." I stood behind her, holding the string. The kite climbed higher and higher. She was so happy, she started jumping up and down. "I'm going to tell my teacher all about this." I watched her smile. In that moment, I felt that life wasn't really that complicated. As long as this little girl in front of me was happy, a lot of other things just didn't matter. At the first parent-teacher conference, her new teacher pulled me aside. "Chloe is a very sweet girl," she said. "She was a little quiet when she first started." I nodded. The teacher smiled, "But she's really opened up." She even told the other kids that her daddy knows how to do pigtails. I was taken aback. She said that. The teacher nodded. She was very proud. I thought about that on the way home, a feeling I couldn't quite name swelling in my chest. My old life had been simple. Work, projects, business dinners. I was busy until late every night. Diane had handled most of the day-to-day things. Now that it was all on me, I was finally seeing the details. Chloe loves strawberry yogurt. She sticks her tongue out a little when she's concentrating on writing. She has to have a bedtime story every single night. These are things I'd barely noticed before. One evening, she was at the table drawing. The picture showed two people, one tall, one short. Next to them was a house. She handed the drawing to me. "Daddy, this is our family." I took it from her. The people were drawn with just a few simple lines, but they were smiling. I taped the picture to the wall. The apartment suddenly felt a little warmer. As the city lights started to come on outside, I stood in the living room for a moment, just looking. This place wasn't big, but it was slowly becoming our life. Chloe ran out of her room, hugging her old stuffed rabbit. "Daddy," she said, "can we go to the park again tomorrow?" I looked at her and nodded. Of course. 05 time passed quickly. Our life in a new city settled into a rhythm. Drop Chloe at preschool, head to the office for project meetings, pick her up, and head home. Sometimes she'd fall asleep on the couch, her little face pressed into a pillow, her breathing soft and even. I'd carry her to her room, and she'd groggily grab my shirt. "Daddy, don't go." I pat her back gently. "I'm right here." Only after the apartment was quiet would I go back to the living room to finish my work. We lived like that for about 6 months. One afternoon, my colleague Joe stopped by my office. He'd been on my old project team back in Denver before transferring out here too. He was a straight shooter, never beat around the bush. He leaned against the door frame and knocked. "You busy?" I closed my laptop. "What's up?" He came in and sat down, a hesitant look on his face, like he was debating whether to say something. "You heard anything about your ex-wife?" I looked up at him. "What about her?" Joe scratched his head. "I was at the hospital yesterday, visiting a friend. Saw someone in the ER. I didn't speak, just watched him." He sighed. It was Diane. The pen in my hand stopped moving. He continued. She had bruises on her face. Looked like someone hit her. The office was quiet for a moment, except for the low hum of the air conditioning. Who? I asked. Joe gave me a look. Who do you think? I didn't press him. He was quiet for a moment. I wasn't going to say anything. But I figured, since you two were, he trailed off. I shook my head. It's fine. Joe nodded. He sat for another minute, then left. The office was quiet again. I sat in my chair, staring at the documents on my desk. The words were neatly typed in rows, but I couldn't seem to process them. When I got home that evening, Chloe was on the floor working on a jigsaw puzzle. She saw me come in and immediately held up a piece. Daddy, look. I took off my shoes and walked over. She was putting together a picture of a little bunny. Only a few pieces were left. I sat on the floor and helped her look for them. She studied the picture intently, her little hands moving the pieces around. Here, she exclaimed, pressing the last piece into place. The bunny's ear was finally complete. She clapped her hands in delight. We did it. I stroked her hair. In that moment, I felt how distant some things had become, like I was seeing them through a thick fog. Later that night, as I was tucking her in, she was hugging her rabbit, her eyes half closed. Daddy, yeah. My teacher said parents can come watch our performance next week. I nodded. I'll be there. She closed her eyes, satisfied. I turned off the light, leaving only the soft glow of her nightlight. She was asleep in moments, her breathing steady. I sat by her bed for a while before getting up. The light in the living room felt a little too bright. I poured a glass of water and leaned against the window. The city was quiet at night, just a few lit windows in the buildings across the way. I thought about what Joe had said. Bruises on her face. An image of Diane flashed in my mind. She used to be so meticulous about her appearance. A tiny paper cut was enough for a Band-Aid. Now she was in an emergency room. I finished the water and set the glass on the table, trying not to think about it anymore. The next day at lunch, my phone rang. It was another old colleague, one who still worked in Denver. We've been pretty close. As soon as I picked up, he started talking. Greg, how are things? They're okay. He paused. Have you heard about Diane? I leaned back in my chair. A little. He sighed on the other end. She's living with that guy Trevor now. You probably knew that. I didn't say anything. He went on. At first, it looked like they were making a real go of it. She was picking Leo up from school every day. Cooking, cleaning like a full-time mom. I pictured the little boy's face. For years old, thin. The way he'd hug Diane at the preschool, calling her mommy. My friend's voice dropped a little. But that Trevor guy, he's got a nasty temper. Especially when he drinks. I held the phone, not interrupting. He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. A while back, the neighbors heard them fighting. It was loud. What about the kid? I asked. He was there, crying. His tone was heavy. Eventually, a neighbor knocked on the door. When it opened, Diane had a black eye. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them. My friend continued. She was hiding in the bathroom with the kid. Leo kept calling for her, telling Trevor not to hit his mommy. When he said that, my hand tightened around my phone. He sighed again. Honestly, everyone who heard about it was stunned. No one thought it would turn out like this. I leaned back in my chair. The blinds were half closed, casting the office in dim light. His words echoed in the room. She went to the hospital to get checked out. That's when Joe saw her. The story came together from different people, the picture becoming clearer. A woman hiding in a bathroom with a child. A violent man on the other side of the door. A little boy crying for his mom. I suddenly remembered something she'd said. The poor kid. He needs a mother. My friend was still talking, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I just said, I got it. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. I didn't touch the papers on my desk. Outside, the sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows on the floor. When I got home, Chloe was drawing again. She held the paper up for me. Daddy, it's our kite. I looked at it. A little girl was running through a field, a kite flying high above her. She was smiling. I nodded. It's a great drawing. She happily taped it to the wall. The apartment was filling up with her pictures. Houses, suns, grassy fields. All simple lines, but they made the place feel alive. I stood by the wall for a moment, looking at them. My mind drifted to another house. A house that probably didn't have drawings on the walls. Just the sound of shouting, of things breaking. And a child, crying. I turned and went into the kitchen to make dinner. The oil in the pan began to smoke, the flame dancing beneath it. Soon, The smell of food filled the small apartment. Chloe ran in from the living room. "Daddy, can I help?" I handed her a small spoon. "You're on taste testing duty." She nodded with great seriousness. She scooped up a little soup, blew on it carefully, and took a sip. Then she announced, "A little salty." I smiled and turned down the heat. The apartment was quiet and warm. A solid place. A place where we could stand on our own 2 feet. 06 that night, just after I put Chloe to bed, my phone vibrated. She was curled up under the covers, hugging her old stuffed rabbit, her breathing soft and even. The night light cast a gentle glow around her. I watched her for a moment before quietly closing the door. The living room was lit only by the light of my laptop screen. I sat at the desk to catch up on some work, project files spread out in front of me. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look up, assuming it was a message from a workgroup chat. A minute later, it buzzed a third time. I finally reached for it. The screen showed a name, Diane. I stared at it for a second. It was the first time she had messaged me since the divorce. The text was simple. "How is Chloe doing?" I didn't reply immediately. I set the phone down, and the screen went dark. A few minutes later, another message came through. "Does she still remember me?" I flipped the phone over, face down. I didn't answer. The apartment was silent, except for the quiet whir of a laptop fan. The two questions hung in the air for a moment, then faded. I went back to my work, staying up late. The next morning, I walked Chloe to her preschool. She ran ahead with her little backpack, then turned around just before going inside. "Daddy, you'll be here this afternoon to pick me up." "I will." Satisfied, she disappeared into the classroom. I stood at the door for a moment, watching as the teacher led the kids in their morning exercises. Music drifted out into the hallway. I turned and left. As I was getting into my car, my phone vibrated again. It was Diane. This time it was a photo. A picture of a small backpack covered in cartoon stickers. I recognized it. It was one Chloe used to have. She'd forgotten it on the day of the move, and I'd packed it away in a box. I stared at the picture, confused. Another text followed. "I found this while I was cleaning out some things." "It's Chloe's, right?" I looked at the screen. The backpack looked worn, the edges of the zipper frayed. She must have left it at the old house. I didn't reply. The phone went silent again. At lunchtime, I was in a meeting. When it ended, I saw 2 unread messages. From her again. "Greg, are you busy?" I put my phone in my pocket without responding. Just before the end of the workday, another one came through. This one was longer. "How have you been? Are you getting used to the new city?" I glanced at it, let the screen stay lit for a few seconds, then turned it off. That evening, I took Chloe to the grocery store. She pushed one of the mini carts, zipping between the aisles. She stopped in front of the snack foods. "Daddy, can I get this one?" I looked. "You can pick 2. She chose carefully, finally placing 2 small bags of cookies in her cart. At the checkout, she stood beside me, seriously counting the change in my hand. Back home, she sat on the floor and opened her snacks. After one bite, she looked up at me. "Daddy," she said, "is Mommy really busy?" I paused. "Why do you ask?" She thought for a moment. "Because she hasn't come back for a long, long time." I didn't answer right away. In the kitchen, the kettle started to whistle. I picked her up and set her on the couch. "Here, finish your cookies." She nodded and didn't ask again. Later, after she was asleep, I turned off the living room lights, leaving just one small lamp on. My phone lit up again. This time, it was a voice message from Diane. It had been sent at 1 in the morning. I stared at the little audio bar, hesitating. After a moment, I pressed play. Her voice came through the speaker, hoarse and shaky, as if she'd been crying. "Greg," she paused, her breathing uneven. Things haven't been going well." I leaned back on the couch, listening in the dark. She continued, "Trevor's temper, it's so much worse than I ever thought." There was a faint noise in the background, like someone moving around in the room. She lowered her voice. "He won't let me talk to any of my old friends. He's always taking my phone and going through it." I stared at the phone's dark screen, not interrupting. Her voice trembled. "Sometimes, when he drinks, he just starts picking fights. Says I look down on him. Says I'm still thinking about my old life." The message paused, as if she was trying to hold something back. Then she went on. "The other day, I was just texting a colleague back, and he threw a glass against the wall. And she didn't finish the sentence. After a few seconds, I heard a soft, sharp intake of breath, like she was wincing in pain. "I never thought it would be like this," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I set the phone on the coffee table. The message kept playing. Leo was so scared he started crying. He hid behind the door, just calling my name. She paused, struggling to control her emotions. That's when I realized this isn't what I thought it would be at all. I looked at the glass of water on the table. The lamplight reflected on its surface, shimmering. There was only a little bit of the message left. Her voice was even quieter now, exhausted. "Greg," she said, the words so soft it was almost a thought. Was I wrong? The message ended. The living room was silent again. I sat there, not moving. The phone screen slowly faded to black. The only things visible in the dim light were Chloe's drawings on the wall. The kite, the house, the little girl. The lines were crooked, but drawn with such care. I got up and walked to the window. The streetlights below were scattered and few. A figure passed by on the sidewalk, their footsteps faint. My phone vibrated one last time. A text from Diane. "Are you asleep?" I glanced at it. I didn't reply. I just turned the phone over and left it on the table. Some roads you choose for yourself. She had walked down hers with such conviction. To turn around now and ask if it was the wrong one, the answer didn't matter anymore. 07 after that voice message, Diane sent a few more texts. Sometimes asking about Chloe, sometimes a simple, "Are you there?" I never responded. My phone went quiet, and life returned to its normal rhythm. On Saturday, Chloe woke up early. She crept up to my bed and whispered, "Daddy." I opened my eyes to see her already dressed, her pigtails lopsided. "You said we could go to the amusement park today, remember?" Her eyes were shining. I sat up and ruffled her hair. "Breakfast first." She nodded eagerly. Soon, the kitchen was filled with the sounds and smells of frying eggs. Chloe sat at the table, swinging her legs as she ate. "Daddy, do they have a carousel?" "They do." "And a big slide?" "That too." She was so excited she nearly bounced out of her chair. After we ate, we got ready and headed out. The amusement park was on the east side of the city. It wasn't huge, but it was packed with kids. The entrance was lined with vendors selling balloons and cotton candy. The moment we walked in, Chloe was captivated. She grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the rides. We rode the little train, then bounced on the trampolines. Her laughter never stopped. I sat on a bench and watched her. She was jumping so high her face was flushed and beaded with sweat. When she was tired, she ran over and hugged my arm. "Daddy, let's go on the carousel." The carousel was at the far end of the park, its music playing in a continuous loop. She picked a little white horse and held on tight as I buckled her in. I stood outside the railing, watching her. The carousel started to turn, her dress fluttering in the breeze. She waved at me every time she came around. "Daddy," I waved back. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. When the music stopped, she hopped off the horse and ran to me. "Daddy, can we go one more time?" I was about to say yes when I noticed someone standing near the entrance. A person hovering at the edge of the crowd, as if hesitating to come closer. I recognized her instantly. Diane. She had lost a lot of weight. Her hair was pulled back messily, her face pale. She looked anxious and out of place among the cheerful chaos of the park. Chloe followed my gaze and froze. Her hand tightened on my jacket. She didn't say a word. Diane saw us. She stood there for a few seconds before slowly walking over, her steps hesitant, as if each one was a great effort. She stopped in front of us. Her eyes were fixed on Chloe, and they immediately filled with tears. "Chloe," she whispered. Chloe shuffled behind me, peeking out with only half her face. She didn't answer. She just said my name, her voice small. "Daddy." I pulled her closer to my side. Diane stood there, her knuckles white as she gripped the strap of her purse. She looked like she had a million things to say, but didn't know where to start. Kids ran past us, their laughter echoing in the distance. The park was alive with noise, but a sudden silence fell over the space between us. She spoke first. I've been looking for you for a long time." I looked at her, saying nothing. Her gaze fell back on Chloe, and a tear rolled down her cheek. "Chloe, you've gotten so tall." Chloe kept her head down, refusing to look at her. I gently patted her back, and she leaned against me. Diane took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "I left Trevor." She said it in a shaky voice. I still didn't respond. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I know I was wrong. Back then, I thought. She stopped, unable to finish. A family walked by, the parents laughing at something their child said. Diane wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't want anything now. I just want to come back. She spoke slowly, as if every word was a struggle. I looked at her, and a series of images flashed through my mind. The sound of that little boy calling her mommy, her dismissive excuses at the dining table, the cold, hard look in her eyes as she signed the divorce papers. The memories piled one on top of the other. I asked her one question. What about Leo? She froze. The color drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence stretched between us. I looked at her. You said he needed a mother. Her eyes darted away. She looked down at the ground. She couldn't answer. In that instant, I understood everything. She had abandoned that child, too. The one she had claimed to care about so deeply. It was as if none of it had ever happened. I looked down at Chloe. Her small hand was still clutching my jacket. I gently took it in mine. Chloe, let's go. She nodded, staying close to my side. Diane stood rooted to the spot, as if she couldn't process what was happening. We had taken a few steps when she finally called out. Greg! Her voice was urgent. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. She stood behind me, her breathing ragged. Can you please give me another chance? I didn't answer. Chloe looked up at me, her eyes anxious. I gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Let's go. She nodded. We started walking again. Diane's voice came from behind us. Greg! This time it was louder, cracking with a sob. I didn't look back. The music of the amusement park swelled again. The carousel started to turn. The sound of children's laughter was everywhere. It was a happy, noisy sound, and it slowly drowned out the desperate calls from behind us. When we reached the exit, I glanced over my shoulder one last time. She was still standing in the same spot, a solitary figure as the crowd flowed around her, leaving her behind. Chloe tugged on my hand. Daddy? Are we going home? I looked down at her and nodded. We're going home. 08 after that day, at the amusement park, Diane didn't try to find me again. My phone stayed silent. It was like a stone dropped into a pond. Even the ripples eventually disappeared. Life moved on. Chloe started first grade. She was more outgoing than before, standing by the door with her backpack every morning, urging me on. Daddy, hurry up. Her pigtails were still a little crooked. I kneeled to tie her shoes while she chattered about school. We have sports day next week. I'm going to be in the running race. She said it with a sparkle in her eyes, like a little flame. I nodded. Should we practice? She immediately ran to an open space in the living room and started pumping her little legs. After 2 steps, she collapsed on the floor in a fit of giggles. It's too hard. I pulled her up. Just take it one step at a time. She dusted herself off, her expression suddenly serious. I'm going to get first place. On sports day, the school field was packed. Parents lined the track, and the kids were all lined up for their events. Chloe stood in her school uniform, her little face tense with concentration. She spotted me and waved. Daddy. I walked over and knelt in front of her. Nervous? She thought for a second. A little. I straightened her collar. Just remember one thing. When you're running, don't look at anyone else. Just look straight ahead. She nodded, her little fist clenched. The race started quickly. The whistle blew, and the kids shot forward, a flurry of small bodies on the track. Chloe started in the middle of the pack. She ran with fierce determination, her arms pumping hard. At the halfway point, she suddenly surged past 2 other kids. I could hear parents cheering from the sidelines. Go, go, go. She gritted her teeth and kept pushing. In the last few feet, she practically threw herself over the finish line, stumbling forward. I was already there to catch her. She looked up at me, her face slick with sweat. Daddy, did I win? Was I first? I glanced at the teacher holding the clipboard. She was smiling as she nodded. First place. Chloe shot up, throwing her arms around my neck. I won. I won. She was laughing and shouting at the same time. I picked her up and spun her around. The field was filled with happy noise. The teacher came over with a camera. Okay, smile for a picture. Chloe stood next to me, holding up her little medal. I looked down at her. She beamed at the camera, her smile brighter than the sun. The shutter clicked. For a split second, my mind flashed back to another photograph from 2 years ago. Also at a school. Also a casual, candid shot. Only that time, I was the one standing outside the window. That one picture had shown me everything. After the events finished, the kids began to leave the field with their parents. Chloe held my hand, chattering a mile a minute. Daddy, I'm pretty fast, right? Very fast. I'm going to do it again next year. I nodded. She suddenly stopped and pointed toward the school gate. Daddy, I want ice cream. There was a small shop across the street with a glass case full of different flavors. I bought her a strawberry cone. She took it and licked it carefully, her face immediately breaking into a look of pure bliss. Yummy. I stood beside her, watching her. Just then, I felt a pair of eyes on us from across the street. I looked up, a familiar figure. Diane. She was standing under a tree a short distance away. Her clothes looked old. She was painfully thin, and her face was sallow. She didn't come any closer. She just stood there, silently watching us. Chloe was focused on her ice cream and didn't notice. I looked at Diane. Her expression was complicated, a mix of longing and regret, as if there were 1,000 things she wanted to say but didn't dare. Her gaze was fixed on Chloe's face, and it stayed there for a long, long time. Suddenly, Chloe looked up and followed my gaze. She saw Diane. She froze. The ice cream cone in her hand paused midair. The world seemed to go silent for a few seconds. Diane took a single step forward, then stopped, as if afraid of scaring her away. Chloe slowly looked away, her eyes dropping back to her ice cream. She didn't say a word. Instead, she held the cone up to me. Daddy, you have a bite too? I bent down and took a small bite. The strawberry was sweet. She nodded, satisfied. Then she took my hand. Daddy, she said, let's go home. I looked at her and I nodded. Okay. We turned and started walking. Chloe's small hand was warm in mine. She kept talking about school, her voice clear and bright. I didn't look back. The street was long, filled with people coming and going. The sun cast long shadows on the pavement. Some people stand still, stuck in the past. Others keep walking forward. And Chloe and I, we were already walking into our new life.